In modern software development, we all the time talk about APIs, and so having a clear understanding of what an API is very important for every developer, and that's what we are going to say in this video today. Hello and welcome to the Android Developer Africa community. Here we promote software development in Africa. So, what's an API? The term API simply stands for Application Programming Interface, which is a mechanism or a contract through which two software components communicate following a well-defined set of rules and protocols. Communication is being done using the concept of request and response. Let's take a look at this image to better understand what we mean by APIs, right? Let's look. Here we have a scenario where a B is requesting for more information from another B. So this B requesting for information can be considered as a client. So he sends a request to this other B, which is the worker B. So he says, hey, we need more nectar to make our honey, right? So this worker B validates the request from this client and sends this request to the server. The server here is like the flower. So the server receives the request, processes the request, and now sends back a response, that is send back data, which in our case is the honey, sends back this honey through the worker B, that's the API, back to the client, right? So that's basically it. So the client sends a request through the API validates this request and sends the request to the server processes the request and sends the response back to the client. So let's take a look at the second example, where we have the analogy from a restaurant, where you have a client in a restaurant. The client gets the menu, he sees the menu and selects the various options and sends the request through the waiter. The waiter here can be seen as an API. He sends the request through the waiter to the kitchen. So the waiter gets the client request, goes to the kitchen and gives this request there. So the kitchen processes the client request and sends back the response to the client through the API. So the API carries the request to the kitchen and carries again the response. The response here is the food or the drink back to the client. So our waiter here can be considered as an API. So that's basically the role of an API between two software components. So that is it. This is how the API works. So the API is in charge of getting client requests to the server. The server processes this client request and sends back the response to the API, and the API gets this response and sends it back to the client that initiated the request. Before we move forward, I want us to understand the evolution of APIs. Many people, when they hear about API, they just think that it's something new. No, it's not something new. APIs started in the early days of computing, where they were simply a set of libraries that was used in the operating system or in programs. For example, you had the Java APIs that existed far before the web, and also APIs have evolved today. We now look at remote APIs, right, where the client and the server are on different computer systems. So the internet has been the most widely used communication network. Most of the APIs are being designed following the web standards. That is why when you talk to someone about APIs, he has a tendency of thinking about web services APIs. So that's the reason why. But one thing you need to understand is that all web services are APIs, but not all APIs are web services. It's very important. It's very important for us to understand that. Now let's move forward. The types of web service APIs. We have basically 4 types, and the first one is the SOAP. SOAP simply stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. This is an early form of API that was used in the early stages of web services APIs, where data has been transferred through XML, right? Requests are being sent over HTTP and SMTP. The next one is the remote procedure call. In this form of API, the client completes a function or a procedure on the server, and the server sends back the output to the client. Messages can be transferred either by XML or with the JSON format, right? The next one is the WebSockets API. So this is a bit a special form of API because here communication can be done in 2 ways, right? I think we'll do another video to clearly explain what are WebSockets API, because this is very interesting. So the next one, that is the most popular type of API, is a REST APIs. REST simply stands for Representational State Transfer. So the difference is that the REST is not a protocol as we've seen above. REST is not a protocol. REST is actually a set of architectural principles, right? It's a set of architectural principles, and here data is exchanged over HTTP. REST has some defined functions like the get, post, put, delete. Basically, these are different functions which are used to send requests to the server. And in the next video, we're going to discuss more about REST. And something very important about REST is that it's a stateless form of API. That's stateless. It means that data is not saved. The client data is not saved during request. No data is being saved. All right. So let's move forward. Classification of APIs. APIs can be classified based on the accessibility and the scope of usage, right? So the first one is the public APIs, also known as open APIs. These are APIs that are open to the public. Everybody can use it. There's no restrictions to the usage of this API. The other form of API we can see here is the partners API. In this form of API, you need special credentials. So for you to access this API, you need to go through an onboarding process. It's only after this onboarding process that you'll be given login credentials in order for you to use this API. Very interesting. Yeah, it's mostly used in like, for example, in financial institutions, right? To get APIs of banks, or to get APIs like credit card or Stripe, you know. Another form of API is the private APIs, also known as internal APIs. These APIs are meant to be used within the company. It's only meant for internal usage. Company uses this form of API to improve their productivity or to link their internal systems. So the last form is the composite APIs. Composite just means that an API is being used to address complex scenarios where a request needs to get data from 3 different APIs. So you just use an API that will be used to get data from 3 other APIs. So this is important because the client does not need to do 3 requests. The client just does 1 request to the server, and the server now in the back actually pull data from other APIs, you know, and now synthesizes the response and send it back to the client. So this is a form of composite APIs. So next, what are the benefits of actually using a REST APIs, right? Because in order to use something, you must know the benefits, right? So API, the first one which I will talk about is integration, right? APIs are used to integrate new applications with the existing software systems, right? This increases your development because now you don't need to rewrite code. For example, let's say that you already have an API which you've done to send SMS, right? And now you are developing a new application. Instead of going back and writing again code that will send SMS to users, you just call the existing API. So API enables us to do some code reusage and to integrate existing code in our system, right? So that's the first one. Now the second one is expansion. API presents a unique opportunity for business to meet their client needs across different platforms. For example, your API can be used on the web, on the Android, on the iOS, and on different kind of applications can use your API. So this helps you to expand. You don't know, no new code is required, so you can expand. So the third one, is the maintenance. API helps us to maintain the application very easily by providing by permitting us to change one system component without having to touch the other parts. So right, so a change can happen on the client without the server being aware, or a change can happen on the server without affecting the client. So maintenance is easy because we can shift the maintenance to affect just a single component, right? So that is it. That's what I wanted to share with you guys on APIs. Please, if you have any question, feel free to drop in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer all your questions. The next video we're gonna do on this API is the REST API. So next video is all about REST APIs, as it's being the widely used form of API. So we're gonna do the next video on REST APIs to describe in detail what is REST APIs, what are the different parts of the REST API, what are the different components of REST API, and how is it used, right? So if you like our video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to share with your loved ones. Thank you and see you soon for the next video. Ciao, ciao.